Alright, hello everybody, it's Paradox. This is the second part of my video series explaining how to play this game mode I created for AO, based off of Captain Sonar, a board game that I played. So, we're going to be going over the basic rules and the rules that apply to everyone. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible, and so it's easily digestible and you don't have to worry about going through all of the rules here. So really, as a player in the RP, you'll be slotted into one of these roles, and while you're playing one of these roles, you do have rules that are specific to you, which we will get into within the next few parts. I have this slideshow that documents the tasks and duties of every single role, but there are also a set of rules and a set of information that just applies to everyone, and that everyone needs to know in order for a smooth game experience. So that's what we'll be going over today. So let's start with our normal RP rules here. As you can see, we have a timer clause. The timer clause literally just states that once the captain moves the submarine, you have to wait at least one OOC minute before you can advance. And it also says something about the engineer and the first mate being completed with their tasks. So really all this is saying is, once a turn you just gotta wait a minute, and if everybody's good to go, then you're good to go. Surfacing regulations, it's all about surfacing, just pretty much saying, hey, you should follow the surfacing regulations, all that good stuff. Ordinance regulations, this is just placing some guidelines on ordinances, and ordinances basically are your abilities that are activated by either the captain or the first mate. But it's important for all of you to know. So the radio operator specifically, while he cannot activate, say, sonar or drone, it is important for the radio operator to know the results of the drone or sonar when the first mate or captain uses it, or they can request that the first mate or captain uses the drone or sonar. But we'll get into that in a minute. So this is just placing regulations on that, and like I said right here, the captain can activate any of the ordinances he wishes, but the first mate can only activate the sonar or drone. The first mate does not have access to any of the other ordinances. And then this is just saying that when an ordinance is used, everybody has to stop for a second so the GM can kind of figure out what's going on and who's taking damage or where they're checking to see if the enemy team is at and whatnot. Communication ordinance clause. In order for sonar and drone I should stop talking so fast. In order for sonar and drone to be used, the captain or first mate must be in their submarine's communication room. So, in AO, let me actually boot up my client real quick. So the communication room right here, basically the communication room is where the first mate, this guy right here, has to go in order to activate drone or sonar. And the captain also has to do it. And they have to come in here in order to activate drone or sonar. So all you have to really be doing is standing in here. This is Captain Butts now. Say hello, Captain Butts. Captain Butts has to be standing in this room before OOC you can come to Paradox or whoever is running this in DMs and be like, hey, I want to use sonar or whatever. And from there, you'll go forward and have a good old time and do whatever it is that you're trying to do. So the engineer's repair clause, the engineer can break their systems from anywhere within the submarine by using their player sheet, but in order for the systems to actually be repaired, the engineer must be in the submarine's boiler room. So very similar to, oh my god, I should stop talking so fast, like I said. Very similar to what I just said in regards to the first mate and captain having to be in communications to use the drone and sonar. The engineer has to be in the boiler room in order to repair things. So Captain Butts is now Engineer Butts. Say hello, Engineer Butts. If he wants to repair things, so let's say, for example, we're looking at our sheet right here, that his sheet looks a little bit something like this, basically. Right? And we know for a fact that if we are able to break all of the nodes within the pink central circuit, which we dictate the circuits by the outlines of the squares, If you don't understand what's going on here, then check out the engineer, guide, and we'll get into that. We know for a fact that if we break this, then it'll repair everything with that pink outline. But in order for the engineer to actually complete this action, he has to be in the boiler room. That's all that says, more or less. Getting into ordinances. So like I said earlier, the ordinances are basically just the abilities that one can use to further their expedition in taking over the other team. So we'll go over each ordinance and what it does really fast. So basically, we have the mine here. When a mine is used, the captain draws an M adjacent to a submarine. So, I mean, using this little map as an example here, let me literally just... Let's create a fake path really quick. Boom. So we are currently right here. Now, if I wanted to use a mine as a captain, all this says is that I have to place an M either right here or right here to show where the mine is. So in this example, we're placing the mine right there. That's all that says. And a submarine cannot move into a space with its own mine. The captain announces mine dropped, and the first mate erases all marks on the mine gauge. Then play resumes as normal. So literally all that's saying is when the captain's navigating, he just can't go across his own mine, as that's not allowed. Same with not being able to go over your own path from before. The only way you can get around this is to surface. That being going through your own mine. You can't go through mines if you surface, because mines stay there. That's all that says, basically. Right here, this is just explaining how the damage works. Before I can get into that, I should address this, which is just saying that at any time, except for when the ship is surfaced, the captain can trigger a mine by telling the GM that they want to detonate the mine, and then they will tell the GM the coordinates as to where they wanted to detonate the mine. So in this instance, let's say they wanted to detonate this mine right here. This mine is on, what, J13? So they would tell the GM that they wanted to detonate the J13 mine, and then from there, anything that's within this little radius I just drew out would get damaged. Quite simple. Right here is explaining how the damage works. To put it simply, redraw this radius, and let's make a orange square. So, if someone is within this area, everything except for the middle square in this little 3x3 square, then they only take 1 damage. However, if you're in this orange area, aka a direct hit, then you would suffer 2 damage. Pretty simple, all things considered. This also applies to torpedoes, which we'll get into right now. The captain can launch a torpedo at a space 1 to 4 spaces away from him, his submarine, not diagonally. The captain relays the point of impact to the GM, and the GM says whether or not it hit. Then the first mate erases all marks from the torpedo gauge, blah blah blah. Torpedo impact has the same outcome as a triggered mine. See the mine section above, obviously. Then play resumes as normal. If the torpedo impacts the space of the mine is destroyed. The captain erases that mine from his sheet. And basically what this is referring to is, remember how I marked an M on my sheet to dictate this mine? Yeah, you just get rid of that, because that mine's gone now, because you blew it up. And this is explaining, how the damage works. It's the same exact thing as the mine with a little 3x3 square. So sonar and drone are all about gathering information. And I should have pointed this out, but the background color of each of these ordinances displays like a different use. So red is weapons, green is like information, and yellow is like utility, more or less. So going into sonar really fast. When a teammate activates sonar, the enemy captain announces 2 pieces of information about his submarine's location. This can include the row, column, or sector in which the submarine is located. One piece of information must be true and the other must be false. So, pulling up our map again here, we are in H8, exactly. The enemy team uses sonar on me, and I have to give them 1 piece of true information and 1 piece of false information. This information can relate to the sector, the column, which would be this, or the row, which would be this. and each piece of information has to be different. I have to give 2 pieces of information, one of them true, one of them false. So in this case, I could say that I am in Sector 3, and that I am in row 8. So, based off of this piece of information, you can tell that this is the false piece of information, and that this is the true piece of information. The fact that I'm in row 8. This is really only important to the radio operator, but, you know, like I said, the radio operator will probably request that you do this at some point, you know, to help them figure out where the enemy team is located. Speaking of things that are important to the radio operator, we have the drone, which functions similarly, but not quite the same way. So, drones allow a team to narrow down the sectors in which the enemy submarine could be located. The map is divided into 9 sectors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. When a teammate launches a drone, the teammate asks the enemy captain if the enemy submarine is located in a particular sector through the GM. For example, are you in Sector 5? The enemy captain answers yes or no truthfully. The first mate erases all marks on the drone gauge, and then play resumes as normal. So, enemy team decides to use drones on me. I am right here. I'm currently on N4. The enemy team asks, hey, are you in Sector 5? Because I'm in Sector 3, I just say no. And they have their information. They know for a fact that I am not in Sector 5. Simple. That's basically all that means. Now, here comes the big one. Silence. Silence is your wild card and your game changer, more or less. This will be the thing that that will get your team to a good spot, more or less. But it can also be your doom if played incorrectly. So, to put silence simply, let's say we are right here. It can only be activated by the captain. And when you use it, you can move up to 4 spaces in any direction without announcing it. You're also allowed to sit completely still. So your options for movement are like this. And the enemy team doesn't get to know where it is you're moving. They just know that it can be in any of these locations. So you will obviously tell your team where you're going, because your engineer is still affected by the fact that if you go east, he has to break something in his east section, and same with north, east, west, whatever. You get the point. First mate also would check something off if you moved, and that's that, more or less. But silence, yeah, silence can be huge, and if played correctly, could win you the game in some situations. It is a wild card ability. It's very good. Moving on. Don't want this video to be too long. It's already 15 minutes. Jesus Christ. This should be the last thing anyway. So, surfacing. Surfacing basically is just a super fast way to repair literally everything that's broken. It's most useful to the engineer specifically, but the captain would also need things to be repaired by the engineer so they can continue moving around, because if too many things break from them going west way too many times, then, you know, they may have a total area breakdown, or maybe the engineer was stupid and they're really close to a nuclear breakdown. Point is, surfacing is called by the captain, and what it does is it causes the submarine to rise up out of the water and rest on top of the water. So, surfacing is an efficient way to repair the submarine, and the only way to reset the route. That's another thing, is that when you do this, the captain can erase the route that has been drawn, and he can go anywhere, more or less. Doing so will leave the submarine vulnerable for a short time, so surfacing should be undertaken with the utmost caution. To surface, the captain will announce surface to everyone in navigation. Once this is done, the submarine will be taken to the surface of the water. A message will play over the radio of both teams announcing that you surfaced, as well as what quadrant you surfaced in. So, we are right here. Quadrant 7. Our path is not looking good. Our path looks something like this. Quite literally, we are trapped because of the fact that we can't move in any direction. So in this situation, we're essentially forced to surface. I messaged the GM, and I'm like, hey GM, we're surfacing now. Captain runs to navigation, and the ship begins to surface. So the GM would then put a message in chat, the IC chat, that just says red team is surface in quadrant 7. Both teams would become aware of this, and now the enemy knows that you're in whatever quadrant. During this time, the engineer will be able to completely repair the submarine. This means they'll get to repair absolutely everything that's been broken. And in order for a team to resubmerge back into the water, they must do the following. This is where it gets a little convoluted, but it's not that hard. Just stick with me. Number 1, everyone must gather in the communications room. So through your hallway, you'll see you have a communications room right here. It's this background once again. So all 4 team members need to come here. Where is... let me GM. All 4 team members will come here, and they'll notice that there's 2 pieces of evidence here that they need to look at. There's a surfacing log, and there's a terminal. Essentially, all you have to do is look at the surfacing log, depending on your role, and then sign accordingly. In this case, we're Larry Butts, so we would sign the name Larry Butts next to engineer, hit enter, and then insert our key into the terminal. Really, you would only do this by just saying that you're inserting your key in character, and once all 4 characters have done this, the GM will put a timer of 4 minutes up. The timer will go down, and then once those 4 minutes are up, the game resumes as normal for you. You're able to move around and do whatever, and all your systems are repaired and your path is erased, and you basically get to start anew. But the only catch is that the enemy will know where you're at now in terms of the sector. They won't know the exact space unless their radio operator is god tier and they've been tracking you like a god. But that's basically that. Pretty simple, all things considered. Very good, very good. And that covers pretty much everything in terms of the basic rules. We have a handful of OOC rules, but I mean, it's basically just saying, hey, don't metagame. You have to make sure you download the content that's required, and you know, just be patient with the GM, all that good stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much the basics of that. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments below, and I will answer. Next up, we're going to move into, you know, the roles and what each role does. Try to make it simple and easy for you. But yeah, thank you.